Story 1. I fell into depression, stopped contacting people, and stopped responding to invitations because I didn't want to do anything. Years went by quickly, and I lost contact with everyone. Story 2. I was always the backup friend. After high school, communication stopped, and I didn't reach out either. Now at over 30, people already have their friend groups or no time, so I am not making any new friends, only colleagues or acquaintances. Story 3. I stopped being the one to reach out first. You will quickly realize that people really do not care about you. I stopped caring. Story 4. Friends get coupled up, married, have kids, and then rarely initiate hangouts. Visits become more infrequent. I make the effort to travel to see friends, but they are busy and distracted. Their partners often seem to prefer not having visitors, so I respect their space, and years can pass between visits. We then find ourselves in our mid-40s and 50s, and time seems to compress. It stings because in my younger years, everything felt so permanent and solid. Story 5. I would always reach out to friends until I realized they did not reciprocate. Once I stopped, my life became less stressful. Story 6. I feel a bit disappointed right now. I thought the percentage would be larger. But maybe it's a good thing the numbers aren't higher. The answer is simple. I had friends, I lost friends, and I did not replace them. Now, 12 years later, I'm posting on Reddit. Story 7. I got married, moved to a new city, and then had children. My life revolves around work, kids, and household chores, leaving little time for myself. In my mid-40s, meeting new people is often awkward and uncomfortable since they already have established friendships. My wife is also introverted and has only a few friends whose husbands I would not typically choose to spend time with, except when our kids are together. My hobbies are quite solitary: reading, watching movies, and working on my house. I hope to find more friends when I have more free time. The saddest part is that my parents, who are from the baby boomer generation, have a large social circle. They are much busier socially, engaging in vacations, cruises, and constant parties. I sometimes wonder how they remain so active at their age. Story 8. I'm just not overly social, and most of the things I enjoy doing don't really require a group. Additionally, I often find it difficult to connect with people in my social circle who enjoy the same activities I do. Story 9. I started noticing I was putting more energy into the friendships than others were. At some point, I stopped messaging first, and that was that. Story 10. I honestly don't know. I didn't go out of my way to avoid people. I think I was sick and missed the class on how to make friends that a significant majority of men attended. Story 11. Autism, anxiety, and depression are challenging experiences. Nothing I try seems to make a difference. I have never been in a relationship either. I feel like I am a lost cause, and no one seems to care. Story 12. I cut everyone off on purpose. I deleted all my social media accounts, stopped answering texts, and skipped out on funerals and family events. I suppose I was depressed. I didn't want to drag others down with me. I also didn't want the responsibility of friendship. Now I'm completely alone, and at least I can't hurt anyone but myself. Story 13. I often feel like I have no friends, but I actually do have friends. I just work nights and rarely see anyone except for my coworkers. There are nights, like tonight, when my entire job is to watch someone sleep. It's isolating and makes me feel alone. That's why I'm on Reddit. I want to interact with people in some way. On the other hand, I'm getting paid to sit in a chair and use my phone, so that's pretty cool. Story 14. I have social anxiety, and people don't usually approach me first. Even those who know me don't seem very interested in communicating with me. Story 15. I moved a lot when I was growing up. I was a painfully shy and quiet kid, not very trusting due to teasing and bullying. I wasn't athletic, so I didn't play sports, which limited my chances of making friends. I also had a difficult home life. My parents separated when I was 7. I lived with my mom afterward. She started using drugs and then had a mental breakdown, resulting in several commitments to mental health facilities. Even when she was home, she was often in her own world. My grandmother looked after me most of the time, I went to live with my dad when I was 11, but that lasted only about a month. He was an alcoholic and was not available for parental guidance or even just to talk. One night, I got really angry with him and told him I was tired of his constant drunkenness and that I hated him. My mom picked me up that night, and I never saw or spoke to him again. He took his own life less than a year later. I found out on my 13th birthday that he had died 4 days prior. After that, I bounced between living with my mom, grandmother, and aunt for the next several years, which created another barrier to forming friendships. I changed schools frequently, never staying at one for longer than 6 to 8 months. By the time I graduated high school, I could count my friends on one hand. Some became addicted to drugs, some moved away, and I had to cut ties with others in order to get my life together. I met my wife, and it felt like just us against the world. We've made some friends, but we've had several moves over the last 25 years. I have a few friends, but none that I'd consider close, none from childhood, and none who live nearby, so I mostly just stay at home. I have my wife and my son, but he went away to college last year, leaving just my wife and me most of the time. Her sister lives near us, and we occasionally go out with her and her boyfriend, but that's it. I have some colleagues I'm friendly with, but we don't hang out outside of work. They are just co-workers. I have no longtime friends that I'm very close with, no crew, or any group that I spend time with. It has been like this for so long that I'm just used to it, I guess. I feel like I'm too mistrusting of people and don't know how to open up. As a result, I often come off as a snob, and I think people don't see me as very approachable. Those who know me understand I'm not like that, but strangers don't. At this stage in my life, I don't see myself ever forming true, deep friendships. I've lost touch with the friends I had in my youth. The last time I reconnected with one of them on social media, after chatting a bit, it was clear we no longer had anything in common and had become completely different people. That reconnection just kind of faded away. They lived far away anyway, so it's not like we could meet up for a drink or anything. I've given up on trying to form close friendships. After a certain age, it becomes a challenge to create those types of bonds. That's how I ended up on the no friends list. It's just easier at this point. As long as I have my family, I have everyone I really need. Story 16. At one point, it was because my lying, abusive girlfriend's lies were believed. Story 17. I was unable to foster friendships as a kid, teenager, and young man. With other members of my family, those were the people who stuck by me. As an adult, I have work friends, but when I or they leave the company, those friendships fade away soon after. It's sad, but I've learned to accept it. Story 18. I have been let down by friends too many times, and that has given me serious trust issues with everyone. I have always made the effort with friends, but time and again, I have been let down. This has led me to believe that most people are disappointing and not worth the pain I will inevitably feel. I am lonely, and it is very tough, but that somehow seems better than what I have felt with people in the past. Story 19. Military. My father served for 20 years, and then I served for 20 years as well. I keep in contact with a small number of people I have met throughout my career, but I have moved every few years my entire life. I am accustomed to leaving people behind. It has become second nature to me now. Story 20. It worked out that way. Normal friendship opportunities did not present themselves during my formative years, so I learned early on to live with it and be comfortable. Story 21. Older individuals often have fewer friends, while younger individuals in their 30s tend to maintain their friendships. Story 22. When you realize that those you might be interested in hanging out with have top priorities of family, careers, and pets, they can never find time to fit you in if they haven't moved away first. Story 23. Moved to a different country in my early 30s. I became occupied with work and building my life from scratch, at least the financial part of it. Being an introvert didn't help. Story 24. I used to have a large circle of friends, but we started drifting apart due to different interests and worldviews. Many of them moved to various parts of the country, so I couldn't see them as often. Then the pandemic happened and I lost contact with them completely. As an autistic individual, I also have difficulty meeting new people, which has led me to this situation. Story 25. did not put in the required effort to maintain relationships, then got married and had a child. This put a strain on any friendship not within a 10-minute distance. Story 26. When I was a child, they were truly my siblings' friends, and I happened to be present at the time. Therefore, they were never my friends, so I lost contact. As an adult, they either saw me as a shield in fights and a scapegoat when law enforcement got involved, or as the friend they would all tease together whenever a woman was present. Therefore, they were never my friends, so I lost contact. Story 27. I really only have one good friend in real life. I have a couple of others that I see on occasion. Mostly, people drift apart or move away. I work from home, do not like bars, do not have a lot of money, so it is hard to make new friends. Story 28. I never had many friends and grew up in difficult circumstances, feeling indifferent for most of my childhood. However, I usually had a couple of friends. My mom often said that nobody wanted to be friends with me. They just wanted to use me, and I think some of that stuck with me. I find it difficult to stay in touch with people and tend to assume that others would prefer if I didn't call. Now, I have one friend who continues to reach out to me, and I feel fortunate for that. Story 29. I fall into the category of everyone being an acquaintance, not a friend. I know people and talk to them, but I would say I have only one person in my life whom I consider a friend. I also served in the Marines for about 8 years after high school, so most of my friends pursued different paths, which somewhat alienated my childhood group of friends. After I got out, I have one person I still talk to regularly whom I consider a friend. However, I know that if I stopped talking to him, it would probably mark the end of our friendship. I doubt he would reach out to check on me. Story 30. After school, I attended a university where no one else from my school went, so I lost touch with my classmates. I completed a course that led to jobs in remote locations, which caused me to lose touch further. I traveled a lot for work over the years, making it difficult to establish connections. Now, I have fallen into a routine focused on work and family. Story 31. For me, since the end of school, everyone wanted to study and travel, so they left. Each year, the connection has worsened to the point where I don't know what they do now. I am also one of those people who loves being alone, dislikes going out, and finds it difficult to relate to others. Story 32. After high school, all my friends moved away. I was already socially awkward, so starting university was strange. I got along with some people and we would hang out after class to chat, but I wouldn't have considered them friends. I focused all my time and effort on achieving good grades and working to support myself. As a result, I didn't have time for socialization and didn't make an effort to connect with others. It's been 12 years, 10 of which involved shift work, making it hard to form friendships. Now, I have more acquaintances than anything. Story 33. I have friends, but I don't have many close friends anymore. My closest friend ended up using needles and drinking too much, so we don't talk anymore, but I keep tabs on him. The others are very religious, and I lean more towards being agnostic and not really caring. It's very difficult at 29 to admit that I feel I messed up my 20s. It's hard to meet people, especially since I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I am trying to figure life out and doing my best not to isolate. Story 34. I wouldn't say absolute zero, but essentially it's the same as most others so far. I have put effort into relationships that weren't reciprocated. I have always been in a unique segment of the Venn diagram. I like different things and there's not much crossover, like football and poetry, metal music and baking, or outdoor activities and science fiction. I know people who enjoy the things I do, but not usually all or even most of them. My username pretty much says it all. I have never followed the crowd. I do things my way and I have never been afraid to stand alone. Story 35. I was used for what I know, and people seemed too busy when I needed a friend to talk to. Nothing deep, just simple hangouts. They instantly accepted other people's invitations but rejected mine. I developed severe trust issues after that and isolated myself, even turning down a couple of wedding invitations. That was 2 years ago, and here I am, literally with no one to talk to. Story 36. I can't say I have no friends now, but when I was in the club, it was hard to maintain a social life while working 7 days a week. Story 37. I'll admit that it's mostly by choice. I'm not interested in most of the things my friends do. With them, all I can do is drink and talk about football, or lately, it's more like talking about fantasy football. A few years ago, if we went out partying and drinking, I would just be bored but could do it for a few hours and then go home. Now, I not only get bored but also visibly annoyed, so I'm doing it less and less. Occasionally, I would try to set up other plans myself and invite the guys. I might have 3 people show up at best, with many last-minute cancellations and some who just wouldn't reply. So that's something I'm also doing less often. Over time, this incompatibility leads to fewer things happening between me and them together. I have progressively lost track of what's going on in their lives, or even just the silly anecdotes and in-group jokes. The only thing that keeps me in touch with them is the local chess league. But I wouldn't be surprised if there comes a day when we won't meet at all, other than maybe at weddings. Story 38. I had 2 friends from high school, but we fell off since our lives took different paths. We are now in our 30s. They have families, and I have never had a girlfriend. I also have people who know me, but I wouldn't call them friends. Story 39. I was always the one to initiate contact. One day I stopped, and it has been silent since then, except for one person who is now deeply involved in questionable activities. I do not engage with that at all. Story 40. I have a few friends, but I largely stopped reaching out and the others faded away. That's fine because all I ever did with them was drink or smoke. Story 41. Depression led me to stop contacting people. I eventually realized that if I didn't reach out, they wouldn't either. When I tried to reconnect, I was often avoided. It became clear that my improved mindset didn't resonate with them since they were also struggling with depression. They did not want to see someone who had managed to get a little better. They stopped responding. Later, I had a conclusive moment, a test, if you will, and I hosted a barbecue. They came, enjoyed drinks, but didn't eat. We exchanged just a few sentences before they left promptly. We are not on bad terms if we happen to meet, but we aren't really communicating anymore. I admit I blamed myself, but after trying repeatedly without any response from them, I don't think that fault lies with me. It's unfortunate that I find it challenging to make friends, but there is more to life than trying too hard. Story 42. Not in the club yet, but I feel like I'm walking into it in slow motion. My high school friends disappeared after graduation. My college friends started falling off after college. I've maintained a group of friends from college, but every year or so, another one disappears, and I'm feeling like it's my turn. We have a group chat going with the remaining 8 of us. Lately, though, I'm noticing that when I send a message, there's silence. Someone else sends a message and there's a long back and forth conversation. I also caught them obviously having set up a new chat group without me. To be fair, I did move a few states away from most of them, but even before that we rarely got together, and then COVID added to the challenge. In the last message I sent, I mentioned I had saved some money and had vacation time to use, and I was considering flying back to visit. Silence. 2 days later, someone else mentioned planning her birthday party, and there was a lengthy back and forth about it. Needless to say, I'm not flying back. Story 43. I attended a small private high school where I never really found a place to fit in. I went to college and similarly struggled to find my crowd. Social anxiety did not help. After school, I was surrounded by adults who were generally good friends, but in a stage of life where they were narrowing down their friend groups due to jobs, spouses, and children taking up more of their time. I never had the opportunity to be a groomsman in anyone's wedding, and I did not travel in my 20s because I never had someone to go with. The worst part is that I feel my ability to enjoy my own company has diminished over time, even as my life has grown emptier. Story 44. The friends I had from youth never grew up. Friends I made in college returned to their respective hometowns. With kids in the mix, our schedules don't align with most of my existing network. Attrition happened within my circle of friends. We are exploring new friendships as my children start school. But having a spouse means the 2 of us need to connect well with their friends. So, I find myself on Reddit until the next group of potential new friends comes along. Over the past 5 years, I have grown closer to my family, which is nice. Of the 12 friends I once had, maybe 1 is still around. Friendship is interesting because it reminded me of a time when I had much more free time. Story 45. Introverted partner, children, work. If you are not in someone's immediate circle, chances are you will just be filed away as someone they used to know. Rekindling some form of connection after years of being out of touch has never been successful for me. As an adult, making new acquaintances is easy, but making a real friend is like finding a unicorn. The superficiality of new friendships is taxing and a little discouraging. Never going beyond surface-level discussions because someone's dad coaches your child's little league team leaves one feeling cautious about engaging on a level where true friendships are formed. Adding to this is the general suspicion of a person's intent that comes with age and experience. Why would I share my thoughts and feelings on any real topic? How are they going to use this information to their advantage? Story 46. Technically, my wife is my only friend. We moved to an area where neither of us knows anyone, and we are both homebodies who do not easily connect with new people. Story 47. I was the mechanic of my friend group. I grew tired of helping everyone without anyone returning the favor. When I chose to set boundaries and carve out time for my projects, suddenly their phones were off or went straight to voicemail. I realized what was happening, so I shut them out and felt better for it. Then I experienced 4 relationships in a row that ended with cheating. I found no reason to trust women either. So I decided to confide in myself and made myself happy with the things I enjoy doing. No humans necessary. Story 48. I have 2 or 3 good friends, and that's it. Once you get older, it's harder to maintain friendships, especially with those who have kids and established routines. I find that most of my friends are my coworkers. Story 49. I always had difficulty making friends and talking to people. At one point, I had a group of friends, but one day, they all spontaneously left in 5 different directions. I didn't know who to follow. Story 50. It's been tough. When I got married, I kind of separated from my close friends because my wife wasn't keen on them. It's no big deal. Now that I'm divorced, all my friends from my marriage were couples. So, it's just me and the kids. I talk to some people here and there, but I don't have any real close friends to discuss important issues. It's a little difficult, but I believe it has been good for me to discover who I am after the divorce. Story 51. I finally had close friends when I was in college 5 years ago. However, they are now working in a different country, and I struggle to relate to people my age. My college friends were unique just like me. Story 52. I essentially moved to a remote area for my job. The people here live conservatively, and I do not share their viewpoints in most aspects. I choose to live quietly, focus on my responsibilities, and secretly harbor resentment while actively seeking an escape. Story 53. My dad is in a difficult situation, and his main 2 problems are: 1. He primarily enjoys emotionally draining conversation topics, similar to an energy vampire from the show What We Do in the Shadows. He lacks empathy and the ability to genuinely care about others' circumstances. Until he addresses these issues, it acts as a barrier to meeting or appreciating new people. Story 54. I was homeschooled without a homeschool group. College didn't work out, and the guys from my old church youth group all left, so I went to another church. I have someone to hang out with occasionally, but he's more of an acquaintance. Story 55. I moved away and had 2 children. I don't have a social life outside my family, but I don't really mind because my kids mean everything to me. I just wish I got along better with my wife. Story 56. I struggle with reaching out to people, and it often feels like nobody cares enough to connect with me. The only messages I receive regularly are from work asking if I can come in. This situation has developed naturally, and I have learned to be comfortable in solitude. I have accepted that I may never have the close-knit group of friends that I desire. While it is disappointing, isolation has become a part of my life, and I understand that there is not much I can do about it. I simply have to accept it as it is. Story 57. If someone calls me and they need something, I simply make a noise on the phone, similar to when telemarketers call. Story 58. I consider myself a fringe 15%er, having only one real-life friend. I don't attend meetups often, I'm not a partier, and I don't know of any good and affordable ways to make new friends as an adult aside from meetups. Story 59. I realized that the people I was around were negative influences in my life. I felt more alone when hanging out with those who made me feel isolated than I did when I was by myself. Story 60. I have never had friends in my life. I have had acquaintances or work colleagues and school peers, but never a true friend that I could call to hang out with randomly or ask for a favor if I needed something. Even as a child, I never had friends. It has always been like that. Story 61. I was in a toxic relationship from my freshman year of college until last December, lasting about 8 years. If I did anything with anyone other than her, she assumed I was cheating and would yell at me. Naturally, I lost any friends I had and never tried to make new ones. Now that the relationship is over and I'm almost 27, I'm starting over, learning how to be an independent adult and make friends. It's not easy. I have people I'm friendly with, but nobody I could call or text to hang out with out of the blue. At this point, it's easier to fulfill my social needs by meeting up with people from a dating app. Story 62. I dropped out of college and my parents moved, so I found myself in another state. Ironically, it was a state I had previously lived in. I contacted my friends and we resumed where we left off. I received an offer for my first significant job on the third shift. Our schedules no longer aligned very well. I met a woman and had my first daughter at 22, which was right when the bar scene was opening up for them. I had a full-blown adult situation on my plate while they simply did not. By the time I possibly had a chance to hang out years later, they were starting their adult lives with jobs or kids, and it just didn't work out at all. Story 63. I had a child with disabilities, which caused me to lose time for almost everything else. I experienced depression, some weight gain, and a general feeling that the good parts of my life were over. The mother of my children went through something similar. We were both stuck, and over 4 or 5 years we fell out of love because everything was focused on our child. Now, I find myself as a slightly overweight single dad who eats poorly, is depressed, and is essentially restarting my life. I am leaving my girlfriend and giving her most of my belongings so she can have things in the apartment. As a result, I'll either go without or exhaust the last of my savings setting up my next apartment when I move next week. Almost nobody wants to listen to a man talk about his problems. No one wants to deal with a middle-aged man going through a midlife crisis, especially one who is challenging company because of the issues he faces. I lost most of my friends almost 5 years ago, and the ones I didn't lose do not live nearby. I supplement with video games and have a few online friends, but those connections are mostly superficial. I will be honest. Many of us probably do not fit into the 15% of people who are considered socially connected because we technically have a friend by definition. However, I suspect the number of socially isolated men is significantly higher than 15%. Story 64. Honestly, I don't think your 15% statistic is true. The definition of friends can be quite different for many people, as some consider acquaintances to be friends. What I want to convey is that, as life progresses, your priorities shift towards yourself and your family. Generally, when men grow older, they tend to prioritize their careers significantly. This often leads to less frequent communication with existing friends. Once they enter into a serious relationship, they tend to focus solely on that, especially after getting married and having children. As you age, you have less time to spend with your friends, which can lead to isolation for many men. Sure, some manage to meet their friends on the weekends, but how often does this happen? In today's world, many people relocate to different countries for jobs, causing them to lose touch with family members such as siblings and parents. Story 65. In my youth, I couldn't relate to the constant small talk, interest in cars, casual dating, and drinking beer. I was often left alone with my hobbies, which did not interest the rest of my social circle. This situation continues to this day. Story 66. All my friends were just friends. One would go to the movies occasionally, while another would want to do something else. I grew tired of never being invited to anything beyond that. Story 67. I was never great at socializing. All my previous friends were made through school. I moved after college and haven't become financially stable enough to have a social life. Story 68. My mother. When I was in grade school, I had a few friends. My best friend was, according to my mother, a bad influence. So she and the school coordinated that I never see him. She tried to replace him, but that didn't work. In middle school, I moved districts. Just as I made friends there, I lost them all. In high school, my routine was set. I never developed the skills to form friendships. I was awkward at best, an extrovert with no outlet. I met a few others who shared social awkwardness, but we had nothing in common. My family lived in the country, so I lacked proximity to others. After high school, it was more of the same. At best, I had acquaintances but never friends. Family is different. Story 69. I wouldn't say I have no friends, but I don't see or talk to any of them regularly. This situation arose for several reasons. First and foremost, I moved to France. It frustrates me that none of my friends have come to visit me directly. They always go to Paris or elsewhere and expect me to stop whatever I am doing and meet them. I have also found it challenging to make new friends locally. It improved right before the COVID-19 pandemic, but since then, most of the people I knew have moved away or drifted apart. Additionally, I stopped drinking, and many of the friends I made were from a pub I used to frequent. Story 70. I grew up as an only child and spent a lot of time alone. I have learned to be independent and not rely on others for companionship or entertainment. Socializing a bit at work provides enough interaction for me. Story 71. I have struggled with depression since my teenage years. I wasn't allowed to do anything outside of school, as I couldn't leave my small street, which meant I had no life beyond school. Eventually, this caught up to me and I slowly lost all my social skills, being unable to converse with anyone except for one friend. It is sad, as I used to be very social. I don't even have two friends who would carry my casket if I died right now. Story 72. I have kids and stopped being interested in drinking on weekdays. The kids were the biggest reason for this change. Friends I've known for 12 years have told me directly that I've changed since becoming a parent. Now it's just my wife, my kids, and me. I am very close with my family, and we have a few couples around us that we genuinely like, but I wouldn't call them friends. Honestly, I'm perfectly fine with this situation. I love my immediate family, and I don't feel the need for more social interactions. If I feel the urge for time away from them, I go to a concert or something similar, which happens about once a year. In summary, old friends just weren't ready for the transition to family life. For us, it has been for the better. Story 73. When I was in my late teens and early 20s, my friend group from first grade found out about something I had done and decided to distance themselves from me. At the time, I didn't realize the impact of my actions, but now I completely understand. After they cut ties with me, I cried almost every day and still miss them dearly. However, this experience allowed me time for deep introspection. I learned a great deal from it, but I would give anything to talk to them one last time. They ended our friendship when I was 22, and now I am 26. I feel completely isolated, with no friends and no romantic relationships. I lack human contact outside of my immediate family and rarely leave my house. It's incredibly difficult, and I often feel overwhelmed. Story 74. I moved to a new city where I didn't know anyone and wasn't sure where to start. My old friends in my previous town began drifting away, so visits became less frequent. Additionally, I have children, which means I have even less time to go out and socialize. The issue is that I have many friendly acquaintances, including colleagues and neighbors, so I don't feel lonely. However, aside from my immediate family, I lack close relationships. Story 75. I have my partner. I'm feeling lazy and struggle with socializing. I don't know how to make small talk. I have two friends I've known since middle school, and I saw them recently after a long time apart. I felt like something was wrong with me because I had such a hard time holding a conversation. I'm not like that with work or my relationship, but with friends my age in social settings, I struggle to maintain a conversation. I especially dislike small talk. Story 76. I had a small close group of friends back in middle school. My friends were my found family, and I felt comfortable being open and vulnerable with them. My parents were going through a divorce, and I was experiencing depression. I had a falling out with one of my friends. When it was time to begin high school, one of my friends moved away, and another attended a different school. My friends were basically the only ones who emotionally supported me. By the time I started high school, I felt quite alone. I stopped taking my anxiety medication early in high school and fell into a suicidal depression, lacking the strength to ask for help. I pushed people away and declined offers from other students who wanted to support me. I even made my crush, who was aware of my feelings for her, uncomfortable because of my mental instability. She wanted to get to know me as a friend first. However, I was infatuated and kept pushing for a relationship, as I didn't receive much emotional support at home. As a result of my actions, I became isolated and didn't speak to others unless they approached me first. I feel terrible about how I behaved during that time, even 5 years after my high school graduation. It wasn't until the pandemic that I decided to drop out of community college to focus on my mental health. I'm doing much better now and continue to work on improving myself. I just wish I had approached things differently back then. I had no friends by the time I reached high school, fell into a suicidal depression, and became mute. Story 77. I used to care a lot about people's approval and validation. As I get older, I just don't care. I enjoy spending time with myself. We are all born alone, and we will all die alone. Story 78. It seems so natural when I look back on it, but it went from not many friends in high school to even fewer in college. By the time I realized it, the last of my friends couldn't see me anymore because her boyfriend couldn't trust her. Since then, I have been trying to be myself. I go out and try to meet people or make friends with coworkers, but nothing like actual friendships ever seems to develop. Story 79. I guess I don't count in this group since I have around 3 or 4 friends with whom I keep in regular contact. So I'm not completely lonely. I'm more of an introverted extrovert. I really enjoy my alone time at home, but I am also very sociable and work in news, so I need to be comfortable talking to random people all the time. However, there are times when I definitely feel like I have no friends, especially when I'm on social media. I had 3 close friends in college, aside from my fraternity brothers, but now it seems they never saw me as their friend since they never reached out to hang out, and I always had to initiate contact. My own depression and introverted nature may have affected this because they were likely aware that I preferred spending time alone and wasn't much into parties or bars, so they never invited me. Other than sending one of them congratulations for getting married last year, I haven't communicated with any of them in at least 5 years. Story 80. After high school, I left my hometown for college. Most of my friendships from high school turned into acquaintances and eventually faded away. I had one friendship that maintained through this time. After college, I moved back to my hometown, which caused many friendships I made in college to dissipate. My friends from high school had mostly moved on by that point, and I didn't want to reconnect since we were never that close in the first place. When I returned to my hometown, I found that the barrier to making new friends was much higher than before, without school as a connecting factor. This was also when I began my career, so most of my social energy was spent on work friends and building industry connections. I also prioritized spending time with family and maintaining those relationships. I recently moved again for work and left behind any friends I had made since leaving school about 6 years ago now that I live in a new city. In this new city, I've been mostly focused on work events, and industry colleagues, and by the time I'm done socializing with them, my social battery is drained. I would like to have deeper connections, but right now, I don't want to spend the time or open myself to awkward experiences. When it comes to adult friendships, I feel that unlike in childhood, people will be polite but often are not genuinely interested in connecting. Additionally, I feel that my age group, in their late 20s, is in a similar situation with many people getting married, having children, and being hyper-focused on their careers. I just don't think as many people have large friend groups at my age as others may believe. Story 81. I had a wide circle of friends, but there were a couple of genuine psychopaths in that group who decided they didn't want me around for whatever reason. One of these individuals spread rumors about me, and suddenly everyone turned against me. It was quite jarring, and I lost a lot. I fell into a deep depression that I am still dealing with, but I am much better and no longer experiencing thoughts of self-harm. These days, I view it as a blessing in disguise. Those individuals were not good people and, to quote Succession, they were not serious people. They were obsessed with image and lacked any real substance. A few worthwhile people reached out and apologized to me once it became clear that this person was a psychopath, as they tried to undermine my friend in a business arrangement. I am friendly with these individuals now and consider them friends, but not close friends as they once were. Story 82. I'm not sure if I'm in the 15%. I have 2 or 3 friends who would come out for a drink and a laugh. I don't think I have a true friend who would let me stay with them for a week or remember my birthday and buy me a cake. Story 83. When you are involved in drugs as I was, you give up everything, including the real friends you once had, and make new acquaintances with whom you can use drugs. I was so deep into addiction that my real friends stopped calling. I took advantage of my real friends and never made amends. Living that way is how I ended up in a difficult situation. I have been clean for 5 years, and my original friends know I am clean, but the damage cannot be undone. Story 84. I stopped spending time with my friends because they primarily smoked marijuana and played video games. This was enjoyable in our early 20s, but now that we are in our 30s, it feels unappealing. I mostly spend time with my girlfriend and family now because they enjoy outdoor activities. In short, I outgrew my friends and am not really interested in meeting people who aren't active and fun to be around, although they are hard to find these days. Story 85. I have 2 close relationships: my significant other and my best friend. However, my best friend is often busy. While I consider my significant other to be my best friend too, sometimes it feels like I have no one to turn to. I am introverted, but having a few more friends would be nice. I have minimal contact with my old friends, some of whom I have distanced myself from intentionally, and others simply because our lives have taken different paths. Story 86. I saw the title and thought I would check it out to see how these 15%ers feel, only to realize I am one of them. Story 87. Honestly, I love my wife to death. Don't get me wrong. However, she often has conflicts with every person I have ever made friends with. Story 88. After being let down repeatedly, I realized I would be better off with a couple of dogs. I was completely correct. Story 89. I have always preferred to keep to myself. I never felt the need for friendship to be happy in life. Story 90. I don't like people. I'm married and have 2 kids. I don't know when I would have time to spend with someone else who is not my family. I have friends from work, but I keep that separate from my personal life. Story 91. I had a solid group of friends, about 6 of us. Then, 10 years ago, I moved to Australia from the United Kingdom, and making new friends as an adult just isn't easy. I have many acquaintances, but nobody I can truly call a friend, and now I've accepted that this is how it is. Story 92. I moved around the world every 2 years during my childhood, so I never felt like I belonged or fit in, and I never learned how to stay in touch. I have mental health challenges such as depression, anxiety, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. On social media, I do not want to be friends with racists, flat earthers, anti-vaccine advocates, or people who feel the need to post photos of their food, children, pets, or hoaxes every 30 minutes. The pandemic severely diminished the last remnants of social interaction and skills I had. Story 93. I don't connect with most people. I find them boring and uninspiring. To me, it seems that most individuals don't have distinct personalities. They have interests that serve as substitutes for a personality. There's rarely anything I enjoy that is popular, which means there's not much I can discuss with most people. The things that I like or find interesting could fuel hours of conversation, but it rarely aligns with others' interests. I also don't particularly enjoy social events or cheerful gatherings. I don't fit into any crowd, so I often feel quite alienated. It frustrates me how little people actually contemplate life. The irony is that most people who meet me seem to fall in love with me instantly. I feel guilty because many want to spend time with me, but I would prefer to be alone in the woods, engrossed in a workshop, or simply at my computer. I married the one person I truly connect with. She's fantastic. I knew I would marry her the day we met. She's the only one who can challenge me, and I managed that by marrying her. So, if none of the previous options are viable, I would rather just spend time with her. So, how did I end up like this? In short, years of mistreatment by peers in school, coping with anxiety and depression since I was 7, tough times, various substance use, and likely a host of undiagnosed neurodivergent conditions. I recognize that I am unconventional, and I completely understand that. When I say I don't connect with most people, I don't mean that I dislike them. I just find it very difficult to forge a meaningful relationship due to these factors. There are many individuals I've met whom I like, but that doesn't mean I'm motivated to seek out a deeper connection. Story 94. My wife died in 2021. After losing her, I experienced what many describe. My entire friend group and most of my family slowly stopped communicating with me. I chose to stop making an effort with those who did not reciprocate and began focusing on myself. Am I lonely? Sure. But that is preferable to being the only one who tries to maintain contact with others. Some family members encourage me to reach out to those who ghosted me after her passing. I refuse to allow them to control when I am checked on, especially since their conversations often revolve around me rather than my well-being. This dynamic began in the first few months after her death and continues to this day. They won't make any effort to communicate directly with me, but they will discuss me with my mother. All I wanted after her death was to maintain a sense of normalcy, as if she were still here. Grief affects everyone differently, but I would not ignore those grieving a spouse as they did to me. Story 95. I am in a relationship with a girl who has some mental health challenges and is a mother. She has gone through very difficult times over the last few years. I have focused on taking care of my family. However, I do socialize at work, which is sufficient for me as I am a bartender and an introvert by nature. Story 96. Only 15%? I don't know if I technically qualify, though. I have no one close to me and no one that reaches out without me reaching out first. In the past 8 or 9 months, I have hung out with someone outside of my family only once, and that was for a short period of time. I have a few friends who are not very close, and I'm trying to cultivate the few remaining threads of relationships I have left to maybe have someone in my life. As it stands, I don't really consider that I have anyone outside of family who is actually a part of my life. How I got here involved a few implosions of friend circles. I guess I was never incredibly well integrated into groups to begin with. The first incident was around 25 years old when I started dating a girl. A close friend's wife, who was also a friend of mine, spoke negatively about me to my then-girlfriend. I have a better understanding now of why she did that, but at the time I was very upset that someone who was supposed to be my friend was bad-mouthing me to the girl I was starting to see. I expressed my feelings, probably in a more juvenile way than I should have. Her husband eventually confronted me about it, and when I wouldn't back down, I was cut off from that circle for about 3 years. At the end of that relationship, I had a close group of friends that I hung out with throughout it. However, the core of my connection to that group ended up sidelining me because his wife was friends with my then ex, and they spent time together since we shared friend groups. I had a rough day when I realized how sidelined I was. Despite him constantly saying he was too busy to hang out with me, my ex was hanging out with him and his wife. I ghosted them for a while. Eventually, I tried reconnecting with both groups, but the damage was done, and it was very difficult to rebuild. It was hard to find the motivation to put in too much effort when none of them did. Later, I had a few separated friends. One was an old friend from college, with whom I have had an impossible time getting to actually hang out. I have not seen him in over 10 years. I decided to stop putting any effort into that friendship last year after I found out he had gotten married. He didn't invite me and didn't even bother to tell me he was getting married. The other friend was someone I hung out with semi-regularly. While I knew he didn't like kids, he said a few too many things I found abhorrent, which led me to decide that I didn't want to spend time around him anymore. Since then, I haven't had the heart to try anymore. I have a son and have turned my focus to him and my own projects and interests as best as I could. More recently, I've started trying a little, but I still don't have it in me to push much. How much effort can you be willing to give to people who aren't willing to give back? It's also possible that I haven't been a good friend to people. I can't rule out that I might be a difficult person and am better off sticking to myself. It's lonely. It sucks. It is what it is. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.